Hello ladies, gentlemen and others. Today I'm going to be giving you the world's most belated and a little bit scuffed year-end top 25 albums list, hosted by me, the most annoying person. So, before we actually start, let's get into the honorable mentions, which are on screen now. I'm going to play a little snippet from each of them.
My favorite poem's what I couldn't say to you. A joke that wasn't funny cause it's true. My flashbacks are you'll be the reason.
It's over, bitch.
Brown paper bag is a litmus, black Christmas in his hovel. Retrofitted the future's home crackers couldn't dig up his file.
And now it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, which is the actual top 25 albums of 2023, not including my album, because that's obviously number 1. That's a joke. Starting at number 25, we have Monolith by Squid. I really loved Bright Green Field by Squid, which came out a few years back. And I thought it was one of the most intriguing, interesting, and personality-filled post-punk projects I've heard to date. And now with Squid's second album, Monolith, I don't like it as much, but I think it is still a very intriguing and interesting alternative experimental rock record. And I think that it pushes a lot of boundaries, especially with the song The Blades. I think The Blades is an absolute banger and one of the best songs of this year. Even though I did prefer Bright Green Field more, that doesn't mean that this isn't a good album. In spot number 24, we have Crisis Sigil, which is another one of Ada Rook's projects. And as you know, if you've seen my last year's video, is that I love Ada Rook and her work. And this album is called Cum Poltergeist. Haha, yes, I know, funny album name, but this is one of the most interesting sludge metal, grindcore, I don't know what else you'd call it, albums that I've heard to date. And I feel like there is a lot that you can get from it. It's the cool glitchy effects, the strange rhythms. It's somewhere between like a demonic sludge fest and a black MIDI record, but actually with a good version of the St. Angus snare. I also absolutely love the guitar tone in this project, and I wish I could figure out a way to emulate it. But I don't know if I'd get that without actually asking Ada, and I don't think that will happen. And now on to number 23, Slowdive, Everything is Alive. As you know from one of my previous album reactions, I thought that the Slowdive album, Souvlaki, was one of the best dream pop albums. I thought it was such an inspiring and beautiful project, and even though Everything is Alive is not as good, in my opinion, I think it's a really good return to form. It's hypnotic, dreamy, meditative. It's got some really cool electronic elements that I haven't heard from Souvlaki. It's a really good return to form, but I feel like it could have been a little bit more enthusiastic. But then again, I think the vibe it sets is incredible, and it has some really cool alternative rock sounds in it as well that I think really accompany the nostalgic feel of this project. Number 22, I love Black Country New Road. Black Country New Road's Anthem Up There was my favourite album of last year, drawed with the world's longest album title, which was last year's Backwash project, and I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. I was a bit concerned when Isaac left Black Country New Road because I didn't know what direction they'd take afterwards, because Isaac was a really big part of the draw to Black Country New Road for me. But seeing in the short amount of time that Live at Bush Hall came out afterwards, after Isaac leaving, I think that they have more than enough to stay on their feet and be one of the most interesting projects of this era. I also really like how the band kind of trades roles and kind of brings a more cooperative aspect to the songwriting and vocal duties. I'm impressed by all of the singers too. Then again, I don't think it was filled with as much passion or emotion as Anthem Up There, but then again, that also is a very high bar to try and reach again. Pupil Slicer is a band I heard about because of last year's Backwash project, and Blossom is a very good project. At times this album does drag, but as soon as I started to understand the broader concept and listen to it as a cohesive piece, I understood the gravitas of this project. They were very talented musicians with complex instrumentation, and I really love the singer's voice. I get big Nine Inch Nails vibes from some of the instrumentals, and I love Nine Inch Nails. Album number 20. You almost definitely have not heard this project. This project is made by an album by Stomechi, who is a Japanese experimental hip-hop producer. And this album, Paper Shot, is one of the most intriguing projects of 2023. This one definitely needs the numbers run up a bit because, wow, there is so much potential here. That's why I didn't give it a higher score. I gave it a score of 80. It's such a distorted, aggressive, dark, noisy, foreboding instrumental hip-hop project. I think that this artist here has one of the most potential of any modern hip-hop producer. So please give this album a listen. I'm going to try not to describe more of it because I don't want to spoil it, but this needs a listen, definitely. And in number 19, another heavily underrated project by the band Eversane called Tell Me Where the Flowers Are. This sentimental, melancholic, indie rock, alternative rock project is beautiful and it's nostalgic. It reminds me of a mixture between Black Country New Road, Arcade Fire, groovy about that, but also with some more angular influence. The instrumentation is a little messy sometimes, but it adds to the charm. And the vocalist has a beautiful low voice that I think you just need to give this album a shot, really. Now, at number 18, we have Rat Saw God, which is my first Wednesday project. Wow, this album is beautiful. It's like a mixture between slacker rock and shoegaze. There's a complex vocalist who reminds me of Adrian Lenker. There are some really beautiful, harsher, screaming sections in this too. And the song All Believer I actually did a short about earlier last year, and this project is beautiful. It's the first country album I've really liked, but it's not really country. It's like experimental shoegaze country, slacker rock. It's hard to describe. Kind of corny elements to this project that I didn't like as much, but that doesn't take away too much from this absolutely immaculate atmosphere. Number 17, technically not an album, but I'm including EPs in this too. We have Scrapyard 2 by Quadeca. If you didn't know, the Scrapyard series is a series of EPs by Quadeca, which has all of the, basically the cutting room floor things from I Didn't Mean to Horn You, or things that didn't really fit with the project. And I think this is the best out of the Scrapyard series. There's some really cool experimentation, and I love the song Dust Cover. It is such a beautiful and ethereal track, and something with a vocal tone I haven't really heard before. In number 16 is a project from a person I'd never heard of before. Slouse and Malone 1's Excelsior. This album is genuinely experimental. It can be a bit too disjointed at times, but this album gives me the same sort of enjoyment that I get from the good parts From Me to You by Quadeca. That's very similar vibes, but I think this project takes more risks and also is a lot more likable. In number 15, we have Dispirited Spirits, the Redshift Blues. This delicate and vast project radiates an atmosphere of openness and serenity. The pauses and rhythms are interesting, and the lyrics are laced with mystery, veiled behind metaphors of space and scientific language. That might sound corny, but it really works. It took me a bit to get used to the vocalist's vocal timbre, but the performances are very emotive, with soaring melodies and non-diatonic notes. Very enjoyable. The glitchy elements also reminded me of Paranormal. There is an incredible amount of creativity through this album. Number 14. Yule's Softscars. I know I just used a comparison to Paranormal, but this is a project that is difficult to describe. So I will try to compare it to other acts, and you can see the kind of gist from there. It's a mixture between like an early Jane remover mixed with Paranormal, Jockstrap, and the Japanese jazz punk band Midori. I start with the Midori comparison, but it's mostly with the mixture of cutesy versus disturbing dichotomy. Yule mixes billowing distortion layers with cutesy instrumentation in an incredibly deft way. And even though I gave comparative analysis, Yule is definitely doing something to create a new sound. The lyricism is great, simultaneously intimate and cathartic. It's an album that definitely gets a recommendation from me. Before we get to the next album, I need to give a content warning. I will be talking about suicide in this recommendation. And here are some helplines if you feel like you need them. Black market carts, today I laid down. Any praise I give about this project has already been said. This album is lush, dreary, patient, tired, and well-structured. It's truly a sadness that we lost Kai to suicide. He had so much potential, and not just that, the most important thing is we've lost a person. Suicidal ideation is a terrible feeling and an exhausting one. I hope at least now Kai has peace. This album is a mixture between indie rock, shoegaze, and art rock. If it's not too much for you, I'd recommend to listen to this project. And if you ever feel as low as you can get and tempted to take your own life, there are always people you can talk to and always people who can help you. Once again, here are some lifeline calls. On a less somber note, we have number 12, Feeble Little Horses, Girl with Fish. This project is one I did not expect to love as much as I did. This album is somehow a mixture between expansive and intimate, distorted, huge, and quaint, and that's all in a good way. I love how gentle and breathy the vocalist's voice is, and it marries surprisingly well with the harsher instrumental. This album is definitely worth a listen, and this album is well worth your time. Number 11, we have Viva Melancholia's Unbecoming. This project deals with loss in a beautiful way. It is simultaneously a tribute and a story of grief. The lyrics are gorgeous. The atmosphere is crushing. It harkens back to an older shoegazy sound and does it so well. This album isn't doing anything really revolutionary, but it really does the older shoegazy sound a lot of justice. My only real complaint about this project is that the vocal processing could have been better integrated, or there could have been a little bit more experimental variation. This project is, wow, it's great. Now we're up to the big ones, the top 10 albums of 2023. Number 10, we have Maps, and this is also the first time that I've listened to Billy Woods or Kenny Siegel, and holy moly, this project is wow. This album feels like you were given an incredibly antipasto, where even though the elements are smaller, they still form a cohesive tasting experience where the contrasts complement, and whenever you sample it, you always get something new from it. The wordplay is incredible, and the sentiment is jaded in an emotional way, and wow, the production is great. There's a lot of personality shown on this project, and the whole cast of features fit perfectly. This album is amazing. I'm finally back at home, so sorry for all the scuffed area and audio, but now let's get to the 9th best album of 2023, which is Maruja's Knocknarea. This is a great post-punk record. Knocknarea is one of the most powerful debut albums I've heard to date. I guess it's more of an EP, but it has the same cohesion as a small album. And there is so much passion, so much energy. They have so much to say on this project. It puts the punk back in post-punk. It has driving riffs, insane drumming, some of the best drumming I've heard. It has really cool jazz influences with like the saxophone that is like if Black Country New Road was angry, and it works really, really well. The vocalist has so much power in his voice, and there's so much groove. This is definitely an EP to look out for, and definitely a band to look out for in the future. Apparently they're releasing new music in February, which is exciting. On to number 8, Danny Brown's Quaranta. Quaranta means 40, and this is Danny Brown checking in at 40. And it's downtrodden, jaded, exhausted, and uncertain. This project is quite sad actually, but there's a lot of charm and nuance in it. Tantor is a great example for me because it's bringing in samples of things from different eras of his life, like modern memes and dial-up, and I think that's pretty genius. But the thing is, Tantor is just one example. The rest of the project is just as interesting as Tantor, and I was gripped throughout the entire length. Quaranta absolutely feels like a portal into Danny Brown's life, and it's one that I won't forget. Danny Brown talks about aging, societal issues, the world around him changing, depression, interpersonal connections, and the production and instrumentation of this album perfectly illustrates that uncertain environment. This is a phenomenal project. Number 7. Remember how I talked about an angrier version of Black Country New Road? Well, Sprain's The Lamb of Effigy is like an insane version of Black Country New Road. Imagine if you took both Black Country New Road projects and mixed them with Shoo Shoo. Wow! The Lamb of Effigy masterfully plays with your emotions, and it's truly a shame that we won't see more projects from this band, but you can definitely tell that there was turmoil faced in the recording of this album because of how emotional it is. I'm not surprised about them breaking up, especially with things like, "I can't sing if you're looking at me." That quote sums up the whole feeling this album exudes. Anxious, nervous, afraid, and disjointed. In number 6, if you know something about me, you'll know that I love Christian Hayter's work. And this latest project from my new alias, rather than Lingua Ignota, Reverend Christian Michael Hayter, Saved, is a wonderful, lo-fi, terrifying project. Lingua Ignota mixed with Phil Elverum. It's like her earlier work has reaching a more folky feeling, and it's in a way that is, as I said, lo-fi, but in a sort of corrupted way, rather than like a chill way, like you know how you think of lo-fi like beats or whatever. This is more like you are listening in through like a broken radio, or a tape recorder that is struggling to keep any of its semblance of being able to play sound. There have been no misses in Christian Hayter's discography, and this is definitely not one of them. Saved is like finding a religious cult, but also finding your own salvation, hence the name, Saved. And now we're up to the big ones, the top 5 best albums of 2023. In number 5, we have After the Magic by Paranol. After the Magic is one of the best shoegaze projects I've heard. So sentimental, so melancholy. It is in Korean, so if you don't know Korean, it'll be a little bit harder to understand. You might have to look into the translations of the lyrics like I did. But it's sort of an album about losing that childhood innocence. But it's also like a tribute to it. It is sentimental, it is powerful, and it has so many crescendo moments that remind me of the end of Earth Mover by Have a Nice Life. After the Magic is definitely worth a listen, and if you haven't checked out any of Paranol's work, I'd recommend After the Magic and also Downfall of the Neon Youth, which is a collaboration project with Asian Glow and Sonhas Toman Konta. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. After the Magic also has some really beautiful twinkly and jangly elements of sort of quaint instruments, but one thing you'll mainly notice from previous Paranol projects is that his vocals have improved so much, and the song Arrival is one of my favorite songs of all time. Now, if you haven't seen it, I've done a video on this album. This Shoo Shoo album, Ignore Grief, is one of my favorite albums of all time. I gave it a 93 out of 100. It shrunk on me a little bit since my reaction where I gave it a 100 out of 100. But the average user score in Album of the Year is 68, and I'm like, how? Because Ignore Grief is such an emotional, such a poignant, twisted, dark and cohesive project. The beauty of all of the dissonance and atmosphere and the sound design left me speechless throughout my reaction. And in the time that I said when I reacted to it, I said it was 100% a contender for Album of the Year. And see, it still has held through. Border Factory is one of my favorite songs of all time, and it feels so downtrodden and almost like you're being trapped in a basement telling these stories of horrific things happening to people. It's definitely up my alley, and it's one of the best death industrial albums I've heard, and it definitely has that intense, deep, dark atmosphere, and I'm very passionate about how much I love this project. Number 3, something you might not have expected. It's I guess it's an experimental pop album. It's Underscore's Wallsocket. This is one that I heard way too late in the year. I wish I heard it earlier because it's such a creative project. There's interconnected stories, left field decisions, concepts that are quite high level, emotion, societal commentary. It's pretty genius. It's very groovy, it's catchy and not in an obnoxious way. And it's what I think that should be the blueprint for amazing modern experimental pop. April's voice is beautiful and perfectly fits the story, and the off-kilter energy and timbre of the accompanying production is so stellar. And I definitely give this a recommendation, as it is my 3rd best album of 2023 in my opinion. Number 2, we have, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Model Actress's Dogsbody. I did a short about this, and it still holds up so well. I love Cole Hayden's voice and how emotional his performance is. I say emotional a lot in the top 3 because that is what they are to me. It sort of reminds me of somewhere between Isaac Wood, Jamie Stewart from Shoo Shoo, Garrett Liddard from projects like The Drones and Tropical Fuckstorm, Ollie Judge from Squid, and Cameron Picton from Black Midi. But the thing is, all of these comparisons, he has his own distinct voice. And the passionate, I say anxiety a lot because I really like anxious projects, but the passion and anxiety of this project are like palpable. There's a sense of fear and helplessness, and the underlying theme of basically being taken advantage of as a gay man in Brooklyn. Rhythms are a huge part of it, and it's such a refreshing take on the dance punk sound, bringing in industrial elements from things like Nine Inch Nails, and I like to see it as a more inspired way than just obviously clashing these two together. But the Downward Spiral mixed with Girl with Basket of Fruit, it's got that same insanity of Girl with Basket of Fruit, but also the sludginess and driving energy of the Downward Spiral. It's definitely well worth a listen. And now, drum roll please. My favorite album of 2023 is something that I could talk about for hours. And that is Jane Remover's Census Designated. I am surprised at how divisive this one is too. I've heard a lot of people I respect say that this is a low 20 out of 100 or 60 or something like that. A lot of reviewers have said that, but I think that this is one of the most well-structured and conceptual shoegaze albums of the modern time. It is not just bringing in elements of Jane Remover's hyperpop background, but it's bringing in grunge elements and sweeping vocal lines and a really interesting direction she's taken herself. I mean, obviously with someone pivoting genre so distinctly in the way that Jane Remover has done. Not that there weren't shoegaze elements in Frailty, but it's just such a different project, and it's experimental in a way that isn't annoying, and there's cathartic build-ups and incredible experiments. The lyrics are crushing, sad, anxious, uncomfortable, and ambiguous. Like, obviously there's a sexual undertone to it, but it's more so like a sensual undertone. But not only is it that, it's also laced with metaphors for the real world. And every time that I get to Contingency's song, I tear up. And if that's not praise for an album, I don't know what is. So in my mind, Census Designated is definitely deserving of the top 1 album of 2023. And that's it. Thank you all for watching. I'm so sorry that this took so long to come out. I had a lot of things happening in my life, but I'm finally kind of done with all that, and I'm getting ready to go into university, and I've also been working on my new album as well, which I'll send a snippet of my old album and my new album, and I hope you like both of them right now. But yeah, to end with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.